everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of Real Talk. If you guys are new here, what we do is essentially we have conversations about the matters of faith, life, and relationships. And you guys are joining us for our very first episode of our 4-part relationship series. And today, I'm so excited to introduce Pastor David.
Come on.
In the house. What's up, yo?
Good to see everybody.
How you doing, sir?
Mate, it's a lot of pressure to start number 1.
No, for real. I think let's get it off the chest. I'm nervous, but I'm excited, you know?
I'm pumped. Come on,
I'm excited because we always do this. We talk about relationships and such, and it's something that I'm passionate about, and you're passionate about as well.
Absolutely. You know, it's one of the things that defines who we are. Everywhere we go, in some capacity, there are relationships involved, whether it be with work, church, life, whatever it is. I mean, it's such a key part of who we are, isn't it?
Yeah. And the heart behind this conversation is that we don't exactly have all the answers, but what I've learned in my life is that the more we bring light into these spaces, we get to be better in these areas, you know. And the motive behind this, or sort of the idea behind this, is to better ourselves, to navigate these spaces with more clarity and confidence. And I think one thing that I've learned from my life is that when the purpose of something is not known, then abuse is only inevitable.
Yeah.
And especially in the spaces of relationships, it's tricky grounds.
Absolutely.
So this episode is called First Things First. So the idea behind this is to really navigate prior to engaging into a relationship. What should we keep, or what should we equip ourselves in being the first things first? What should we work on as single individuals?
Yeah.
And for you, you've journeyed with many couples and singles, and you have so much knowledge in this area.
Thanks. Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, I guess for me as well, married to my beautiful wife, Sonia, now 10 years together, 15 years. I mean, there are so many things that no one tells you about before you step into your next step, whether it be dating, whether it be marriage, whether it be parenting. So many things that they don't tell you about. So absolutely passionate about these subjects, and something that as a pastor, I spend most of my weeks investing in, and that's relationships.
Yeah. What's Take us through a bit about your story with Pastor, because you've always you always give her a shout out every time we hang out. You always shout out your wife, man, and you've got a crazy story to tell with your love story with Pastor Sonia, and I think people would like to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, one thing that I always say, Aaron, which is why I talk so much about her, is that for all you boys out there, if you're batting above your league, amen to that. You got to be acknowledging that every single day, and that's what's happening with me. So we've been together now, married 10 years this year. We actually met 17 years ago.
Wow.
Half a life ago. I'm 34 now. Yeah. We actually met at a church play. All the Spanish churches got together around a play. Prior to this, I had met Sonia. She was actually a tomboy, believe it or not. And she'll laugh at me saying this, but you know what? You can't deny the truth. I actually thought she was a boy when I first met her.
Was it the way she dressed? Or?
Yeah. She had dressed in tracksuit and had the unibrow, everything. She was 14.
Oh, my goodness.
But when I actually met her at this play, obviously she had realized that there was makeup. All these things could happen. She dolled herself up, and she actually looked amazing. She's a beautiful girl. I'm like, who is this girl? I didn't even recognize her. But anyway, 17 years ago at this play, we're at university campus here in the western suburbs of Melbourne at VUT St Albans. And I remember walking in, and at that moment, November the 5th, 2002, I remember looking at this girl and saying, that is the girl that I'm going to marry one day.
Yeah.
Well, 17 years later, here we are, 10 years married, 2 children, and we're leading a campus for Numa Church in the western suburbs of Melbourne. Can you guess where? VUT St Albans, the very same place that I met her 17 years ago. So, you know, we've been together for all that time. Well, actually, no, I lie. We were together for about 3 months, which was a long-term relationship. And we were at that age. I was 17, she was 16. But we officially got together in 2005. I'd love to say that it's all been great, roses and everything. But the reality is there are challenges, but we've chosen to push through, to fight through. And here we are now, you know, in 2019, married 10 years, 2 incredible children. Yeah. Living our best years.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Man, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
My pleasure.
One of the things we talked about last time we hung out, it was at a cafe. What was a cafe called the churro place?
St. Churros.
St. Churros, yeah, because you've journeyed with Pastor Sonia for a while, and you know, marriage is a beautiful thing, and I think for most of us who are watching this, that's something we want to walk into eventually, right?
Yeah.
And you said that you know, it's not always, you know, sweet with beautiful roses and such, and it can be tough.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge before getting or engaging into a relationship and keeping the first things first, and this will be my first question for both of us, and I would love to give for you to give your insight on this, is what is the definition of love? Because I think the world out there has really polarized love into sensuality and erotica, and I think you know, pertaining to my previous relationship and just being truly candid, it's an area where I really messed up.
Yeah.
You know, what I thought love was only a physical transaction.
Yeah.
And at the same time, in saying that, I also give grace to myself because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
But I take to the chin and also accept that I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I think part of that wasn't surrounding myself with the right people to speak into my life to to walk that out, but also not looking for the real definition of love.
Yeah.
And if you could speak on that, because I think many people out there, they walk into a committed relationship,
Yeah.
but they don't know what the real definition of love is.
Absolutely. Well, I think for me, the starting point always has to be from the Bible. What love is, and even before getting into that, I mean, love, the way that the world points towards love, like you mentioned, there's that physicality about it, but there's also this whole emphasis on love being an emotion. I fell in love, like some sort of random accident that I fall into, no intentionality. But the reality is, love is far further from that truth that the world calls truth. Love is a choice.
Yeah.
When we read the Bible, excuse me, in John 3:16, it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave." It was the transaction came from the heart of giving, to choose to give because there is worth on someone else, there is value on someone else, to choose to give the very best to someone. That's what love is.
Yeah.
So when I think about, my own relationship, there are some times that, we might rub each other up the wrong way.
Yeah.
Probably me more than her. But the fact is, my choice is beyond anything that she can do, good or bad. My choice is that she's the person I give my heart to, I give my life to, that I serve. Love is serving as well. It's choosing to put their needs, not always above mine, but equally where mine are as well.
Yeah.
So for me, love is that choice. What comes from that is the emotion. Those feelings of joy, those pins and needles. That's something that's an effect of what it is. But the importance of love is firstly understanding your own identity in that. And so again, even within that, in the word, it says Matthew 22:36-40, you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, mind. Then love your neighbor as yourself. Understanding your identity, understanding your worth, then positions you to choose to see that same worth in someone else, to treat someone else at the same level of value that you yourself deserve to be treated. So again, it really all comes back to that choice. To choose to love someone is to choose to put that value and not necessarily overlook the negative aspects of it. You don't condone bad behavior, but you don't just focus on the negative, but you actually look at the positives of who that person is as well. You choose to invest into that person. You choose to be vulnerable with that person. The more you're in love with someone. So for example, for my wife, there's levels of intimacy that we have in all areas, not just physical. We're talking about spiritual and emotional as well. She knows everything about me more than anyone else on this planet will. But that's because I choose to be vulnerable with her. I choose to communicate with her. I choose to let her see every part of who I am, which is why so many relationships fall apart sadly at times. Is because we enter into this with our own excess baggage, hoping that the other person will sort them out, but we'll choose to only give glimpses of who we are. And we put unnecessary pressure on the other person to somehow write something that only God can do through us, and something only that we can choose to address. So going back to that, it is a choice. It's choosing. And I know it's very long-winded, and you'll get to hear me today. Now, I love to talk. I love to really paint pictures. But something that I say, for example, when I marry couples, I get the honor to marry a lot of couples. I talk about love is a choice. It's choosing to always see the best. Choosing to always prioritize that person, choosing to always have God at the center, choosing to not always wanting to be right, but actually being humble enough and admit that you're wrong. But it all comes back to that whole fundamental choice.
Wow, that's powerful. I love how you drew from the greatest commandment, and I was reflecting on that verse, right? And it's funny how it says it's the greatest command, because love is not a feeling. That in the morning when you wake up and this person ticks you off, or your girlfriend or whoever, your friend or your mother ticks you off, like, you have to choose, command yourself, hey, I must choose to love this person because it is my choice. I think, with John 3:16, the quote you pulled, right? It was crazy because I thought about that there is no precondition for love, that God is just love. And it's funny for me to say this because I came from a background where I didn't look to the Bible for my standard. I looked to my own standard, my own truth, and my own truth wasn't enough. It didn't suffice. It was the world standard, right? It was more like, if you give me this and I will give you that. It was transactional. But looking at God's love, his standard and way of love, is that because he is love, that he gives it so freely. And it's that very nature, it's that very thing, that essence of that, where it's like, this love I give freely to you. You can't do anything for me to change my decision. It's my choice. And I think from that standpoint, perhaps we can begin a pure canvas of a pure good relationship.
Absolutely. And when you think about that, it's so, just even in that, like there's nothing that you can do to take that love away is God's view. It's so countercultural.
Yeah.
Because again, when we talk about what culture tells us, I fall in love. Well, if I can quickly fall in love, I can quickly fall out of love.
Yeah.
And so, so many times we're so much a society that focuses on instant gratification.
Yeah.
So many couples that I counsel, like pre-marriage, this person cannot do anything wrong. And yet I find myself over the last 2 years having gone on journeys with up to 16 couples that have barely made 2 years.
Sheesh.
And it's almost like they forget those moments where they could do anything wrong because they live in the now. Well, you haven't met my needs now.
Yeah.
Which again, I mentioned earlier, it's unfairly putting pressure on the other person to somehow eradicate a lifetime of a worldview or of an upbringing, etc.
Yeah.
And they forget that that there was once a time that this person could do no wrong.
Yeah.
Because again, society teaches us, well, you fall in love, you can fall out of love, move on to the next thing. Whereas the Bible teaches us that when we were at our very worst, God decided to give it. Didn't wait for us to attain a certain level of excellence. At our very worst, he gave out of love.
Yeah.
That is the blueprint for us. That when we talk about in our vows, for sickness and in health, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, it's not saying in the event it happens. No. There are going to be seasons of sickness and health.
Yeah.
There are going to be seasons of richer. There are going to be seasons of poorer.
Yeah.
There are going to be seasons of better. There's going to be seasons for worse. So again, it's choosing to remain. The constant in that is that I still remember the very moment where you could do no wrong. Looking at it from that lens, I choose to love you because I've seen you at your very best. And we can get through this storm of the very worst. It comes back to that choice.
Yeah, wow. How would you, per se, just to sort of just add on to this question, how would you, because I know you've did a lot of youth work back then, mentoring and, raising up young men in Western Melbourne, right? How would you speak to perhaps somebody, a character like me in my, when I was 17, who was lost, who doesn't know the standard or, the standard of love? How would you speak to that person and advise them to a healthier definition of love?
Yeah, look, I guess for me, it's starting. I find that personally encouraging people is the way to someone's heart.
Okay.
And by encouragement, I don't mean just saying things falsely. I mean, encouragement actually requires us to not focus on ourselves, but actually focus on other people and see good in them. Because the reality is, when we're created, we're all created innately good. Now, at some point, our upbringing might condition us to make dodgy decisions, and that's okay. But for a 17-year-old, for me, the first thing is, obviously acknowledge that their decisions are obviously impacted by something that's been part of their upbringing, whether it be family, whether it be external circumstances, and actually separating that from who the person is. Decisions that you may have made as a 17-year-old, you are not the sum of the decision that you made. Your best years are ahead of you. So in understanding that is, well, again, it's focusing on the identity on the individual, because the reality is I could teach someone how to love someone else, but if at the end of the day, their self-worth is minimal, when we talk about love your neighbor as yourself, you're going to treat other people the way that you think you deserve to be treated. So I'll exemplify by actually treating you the way that I know you should be treated.
Yeah.
Teaching, an individual, a 17-year-old or anyone for that matter, the importance that they are worth something. They are not worthless. They are worth something. To encourage their own identity in that, to point out things that they are passionate about, that inspire them, really speak those things up, because what that then does is when you understand your self-worth, as that elevates, naturally you then treat other people much better in that sense, because you realize if I'm worth something, I'm going to give what I have to other people.
Yeah.
So for me, it really starts with the identity. It really starts about going for the heart of the person, as opposed to trying to teach someone some principles or guidelines on how to live. Because again, if you don't have the stuff in your heart, you can only fake it for so long. And so, yeah.
Let's tap into that. You talked about identity and all these things, right? I think what I've come to learn about myself in this journey of having been through brokenness and pain and just being lost and confused is that it really helps to, and this ties into love as well, right? In our romantic relationships, but beginning with ourselves, given this is the first things first episode, one thing that I've learned is that it's very important to know who you are and where you're going.
Yeah.
Because in knowing who you are, you know what you want to do, and where you want to go, then you know who to take with you.
Yeah.
Isn't it the essence sort of like in journeying, partnering in life with somebody, because you want to walk that out? And, and I think when those two things align, you can better journey with somebody and love somebody when those two things align.
Yeah.
So how important is it in knowing yourself?
Yeah.
And how does that tie into to love? And I know you already talked about that. If we could go in a bit deeper.
It's probably the most important aspect of any relationship. is knowing who you are, your identity. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest mistakes that we make as we enter into relationships is somehow thinking that another person is going to feel the inadequacy in my heart. But the reality is no one can until you acknowledge, first of all, acknowledge the fact that there is that inadequacy there. And that one, that it's okay, you can build on that. There's not one perfect person. The only one that is the one that we're going to celebrate on Christmas Day. And acknowledge that. Take that pressure off yourself. And so when you acknowledge that, what that then does, again, it gives you somewhere, it takes away the pressure on someone else having to make you whole, but it focuses on you to be able to start building in the areas of what you do. Because as someone has a weakness, we also have our strengths as well.
Yeah.
So you're able to start focusing on what you're not. You can start focusing on who you are. Addressing the baggage of what we bring. I know for me personally, my upbringing played a big role in who I was in relationships.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm answering the question now. I might be going on a tangent, but I feel it's very important to address this as well. And it's not that I had a bad upbringing. Praise God, I had two parents that worked very hard for us, that provided so much for us, but they didn't have anyone to model to them what good parenting was. So my upbringing consisted of me being told pretty much all my life, it's not my job to tell you when you're doing good, just when you're doing bad. So when I came into the relationship with Sonia, I was trying to find, somehow unfairly put pressure on her to try to tell me that I'm good, to try to get acceptance from her. Whereas the journey, it really, very shortly into our journey, I realized that she can't do that for me.
No.
I have to start actually figuring out for myself, letting go things, forgiving where I had to forgive, acknowledging the realities of my strengths and my weaknesses, starting to focus on that and addressing my inadequacies, but realizing that my worth and the gifts that I have are so much more powerful and significant than my inadequacies. And in doing that, as I started addressing that, I started finding that I started treating Sonia a lot better. And it was the thing that I didn't even have to be intentional about it. It just naturally flowed. Yeah. That when I realized that, I am more than enough, then I realized that for me, I could be, rather than trying to make her be the woman that had to somehow make me better, I naturally became the man that she deserved, that she prayed for. And naturally, as I became the man that she deserved, she became the woman that I deserved.
Yeah.
So I hope that answered it. I think I might have gone on a tangent.
That's so true. Using perhaps, my previous relationship, or what I found was that in my lack of knowing who I am, I try to find identity in other things, and the standards of the world. Because, I think one of the things that really influenced me was music.
Yeah.
And that was really bad because the way music talked about, how you should be a macho man who has a lot of this and that, and, be cool with the girls and all those things. I remember, in my previous relationship, I would claw away at her, digging at her through my insecurities, how you should look this way, how you should be that. Yeah. But it's essentially, I was really screaming out my insecurities because I didn't see myself as of any value. Yeah. And that's really damaging. Yeah. That's really damaging because I was trying to fill a void in my heart and trying to demand that from her, in which she couldn't supply because only God can give me that. Yeah.
And it comes back to, when I mentioned earlier, the love your neighbor as yourself.
As yourself, yeah.
And not instead, not despite, as yourself. You can only give what you have. Yeah. And I know it doesn't sound like this massive, profound statement. It's Captain Obvious, but the reality is it's that at some point, you can only fake it for so long that at some point, you're going to start treating other people the way you feel you deserve to be treated. Yeah. And the golden question that often comes with that is, okay, it's easier said than done. Know yourself. How does one know themselves? Well, for starters, it's not in what you do. So many people that you meet are somehow, they attach their identity to either a vocation or something that they're good at. It's actually much deeper than that. It's what do you value? What are you passionate about? So whenever I talk to single people, right, when they're trying to find out about how can I date someone, what's the right way? The reality is there's no right way. You've got to use your own personality. But a lot of the questions that I get people to talk to in these situations are like, asking questions, what are you passionate about? What inspires you? Yeah. Tell me your story. And notice that these questions are not so much about me talking all about myself. It's about actually getting to know others, understanding context. In that, what happens, right, it takes pressure off, but it helps you actually think about that for yourself as well. Yeah. So you focus about your identity, and it doesn't become about a performance. It becomes about what's something that in my, so for example, for me, what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about seeing people that are disadvantaged or, I guess, the underdog in life, and inspiring them to become the best version of themselves. Yeah. And a line that I use regularly is I feel that my own passion, my own calling is to inspire the uninspired. Yeah. So I know for me that that's something that I'm passionate about. So then what happens, because of my passion, what then happens is I love to encourage people.
Yeah.
So then I like to observe people. I like to, see where they can be at and just encourage people in that area and just love on people that way and listen, be present and just hear where people are at. That just naturally comes out.
Yeah.
But I wasn't always like that. I used to be the person that I used to feel like, I would have to compete. I often call it in relationships, not just romantic and just in general relationships. I often call it the whole relationship tennis match where you tell me something that you've done, so I try to better you by saying, well, this one time I did this, and then you tell me, but then I did this, and it becomes about us.
Yeah.
It really just breaks that when you understand what you're passionate about, when you understand what you're gifted in, when you understand about what makes you tick. What actually then happens is it takes pressure and you actually become more interested in something. And that's what relationship is. Communication is not just getting my point across, but it's about actually positioning the opportunity to have someone else's voice heard.
Yeah.
And in doing that, in your own identity, you realize that the world's not just about you. There are other people, but then it actually also builds you up. It goes back to the biblical principle, Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one man does another, or woman, in this translation. But the important thing that comes out of that, relationship is not about me, it's about us.
Yeah.
It's about hearing, it's about understanding. Part of that brings conflict. Conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. We may not always see eye to eye on things, but conflict, what it does, it gives you a different context, a different point of view. And it goes back to identity. What it does is that, it's okay that not everyone's going to see the world the way that I do. It's okay that people are different, but that's the beauty of life, is that we are different. We do come from different backgrounds. But, you know what I mean? Like, it just really opens up that opportunity to actually grow as an individual, but also with relationships around you.
But I think it just helps so much, man. Like, because I think when you come to a point of really knowing who you are and what you're meant to do, like, I wouldn't say nothing affects you, but it puts you in a place of a lot of giving, where it's more just like, hey, like, say you want to journey with somebody, right? And knowing who you are, knowing where you want to go, all you can really do is now just give. Give a lot. And of course, there are some expectations and degree to that, but for the most part, there's harmony and sweetness to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because now you're not clawing away at the person, trying to find your identity in them. And so many people fall into that trap when they get into a relationship, not knowing the standard of love, not knowing who they are, and it's just coming in empty. So now you're trying to empty the other person to fill yourself up. That's crazy. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure, man.
Segueing into the next question, and this ties into the first one. How can individuals prepare themselves for relationships? How can we better do that? So I think we began with knowing the standard of love and the definition of love. But I guess now this is the more exciting part, because we talk about singleness and the standard of pursuit, and I want to talk more about that. So what's sort of the advice that you give to people who want a healthy relationship? And who want to enjoy the benefits of a healthy relationship, and where can they start?
This is going to sound like the most random answer to give, but it starts with the now.
Okay.
Because with any relationship, first of all, I mean, for those who are single, singleness is not a disease. It's not, because what can happen is, I think we always want the next step. We always want the next thing. And we let life pass us by, realizing that the journey is just as beautiful. It's okay to desire that. But when you bypass living for the desire of something else that it's not your season yet, it's to the detriment of yourself. So it starts with now, in the moment. Okay, there are things that you can control, there are things that you can't control. Right now, you may not have that person, so you can't control who that person is. But what you can control is, just investing in the relationships that you do have, the friendships, the meeting people, and again, discovering what I mentioned earlier about the things that you're passionate about, the understanding who you are. I feel is very important in that, because what it does is that when you do get into the next stage of your relationship, it's not going to magically make something disappear. And can I give an example of that, for example? So one thing that when I was dating Sonia, when we got together officially as adults, I remember 3 years in, we actually broke up. And the reason why that is that the girl that I had met that was so strong-willed and had such an ambition in life, all of a sudden was a shadow of herself. Everything was revolved around when we get married. Everything was around, so when we get married, this is going to change. When we get married, that's going to change. And then we would talk about, where do you see yourself in the future? Well, I see myself with you wherever we are. And she didn't realize that what that was doing to me was actually putting a lot of pressure that somehow then I'm the barometer for our happiness in the future.
Yeah.
Her identity became centered around me
Yeah.
and us, as opposed to, well, you've got your own goals and ambitions. Like I still had my goal to be a youth worker. I still had my own personal ambitions. That never changed. It was just like, cool, I'm just going to have this incredible woman with me on the journey. Like it doesn't change that. And so we broke up because I wanted her to discover her own identity, her own passions again.
Yeah.
And when we broke up, I didn't put a timeline on it. I don't think that's fair. I don't want to say change in 2 months. It's just like, hey, I know that this is a big risk. But I remember saying to her when we broke up that, if you go out there and you meet someone, but they can get to have you as a woman that I know that you can be and who you are,
Yeah.
then, it's a sacrifice well worth taking. Wow. But in my heart, I know that, I've got to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm believing that we'll get back together. So it wasn't like this cop out for her. I had to go on that journey again.
Yeah.
I had to go on that journey of being okay with the fact that, she may meet someone else and be the best version of herself with someone else. But I need to be okay that I still need to focus on my own journey, my own God calling, my own identity, letting go of things and hurts of my own past and all that. Well, anyway, about 4 or 5 months later, I don't want to embarrass her, so I won't say how we got back together. I remember we caught up, and I remember just seeing that twinkle in her eye, that purpose, that drive in her eye. She got it. That the wedding day wasn't going to change anything. The wedding days are beautiful. They're fantastic. You spend a lot of money on them and great.
Yeah.
But the wedding day shouldn't be the pinnacle of a relationship. It should be the actual benchmark for what should be an even stronger and greater marriage.
Come on. Yep. Let's go.
And so, again, what does that mean if you're single? Well, that means in this season, hanging your hopes on a moment when you meet someone and you start dating, can I tell you, even from my own experience, you'll be bitterly disappointed.
Yeah.
And what will happen is you'll date and you'll be like, well, I'm dating the wrong person. When if I can be a little bit direct, well, actually, you're the wrong person because you haven't addressed the things in your heart because no one else is going to fill the void or the holes that one, only God can, and two, only you can sort and fix.
Yeah.
Because again, when two people come together, it's an unstoppable force, an immovable object coming together.
Yeah. Wow.
And so there's always going to be tension, but we confuse tension for being the wrong person. And then we wonder why we're in that same repeated cycle of singleness. So, like I said, it's an exciting season because it's in this season where you can really start to identify your own values, your own expectation, your own worth.
Yeah.
And guys and girls out there, when you realize your own worth, you won't settle for anything less.
No, not at all.
And your view will change. When I say settle, again, we often think of looks, but even beyond that, I mean, if you marry for looks, you got to live with character. That's the reality of life. But when you understand your worth, there's a saying that goes, misery attracts company. Well, the opposite is true. When you actually identify your worth and you live out of that confidence, there is nothing more attractive to anyone than seeing someone who's joy and confident.
Yeah.
And there is nothing more repulsive to anyone than someone who's just miserable and always complaining about life.
Yeah.
And so when you actually realize about where you're at in life, the things that you need to, recognize that you can control again is how you treat others, how you treat yourself, how you invest in the relationships that you do have. What you find is that you'll look back at those seasons and be like, gee, I'm glad that I lived that life, and because it's not, like I said, it's not a disease. It's just another season in life. And I don't look at my single season in life as being miserable or anything. There are lessons that I learned about myself in that time. And I believe that I'm all the better for it today as a husband because I've had to address and go through things that I need to go through on my own.
Man, that's crazy. I really like the part where you said how you had to let her go because there are things that need to be worked on, right? And at the expense of the possibility that she might end up with somebody else who'll bring out the best of her. And I was thinking, like, isn't that love, though? That when it's more about the person than you now? Yeah. I remember and using real life examples, because this is real talk and we want to use real life examples. In my previous relationship, like, I was very toxic, and she always wanted to leave, but I always wanted to pull her back. But I realized, and reflecting now about the past, I was thinking so much about me, where I just wanted to hold on to her. I wanted to hold on to this person because you brought me happiness. But the fact is, when I make her the standard of happiness, when she's the point of happiness, I'm draining her out.
Absolutely.
Right? Then I realized from here on out, I was like, wow, love is not that I keep you and hold on to you for myself, but love is that I would let you go and want you to see the best person come out of you and be the better person that you are from this, Yeah, that's insane. And speaking of singleness, what I've come to find, and I'm coming from that pain and just really focusing on details from the past and how I want to be better. because I realized, and pertaining to the previous question, I realized I didn't have the standard of love because it wasn't God's love. It was my own definition of love.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I took the saying quite seriously. Be the one who you're looking for is looking for.
Yeah.
So I started investing in myself, and that came through small things like reading books, working out, exercising.
Yeah.
So it's a simple thing like, if I want to be eventually in a healthy relationship, like we do fitness together, then I should be doing fitness myself right now.
Absolutely.
If I want an intellectual woman, an intellectual partner, then I should be studying myself right now, or if I want a godly woman, then I should be of holiness as well and pursuing God and God's heart. Yeah. And perhaps if we could expand on that, on practical things that we could apply in our singleness.
Yeah.
I think what I want to speak into is you're in a position right now where you're in a beautiful relationship, leading a beautiful house for God.
Yeah.
A lot of powerful people in the house. Shouts out to them if they're watching this.
Yeah.
But what are practical things we can do to apply? I mean, I'm talking about real practical solid stuff that we can sort of build on, and that really brings value to our identity.
Well, you just hit it on the head. I mean, there are qualities that we look for in other people, in our relationships.
Yeah.
So actually, what am I applying in those areas? So you use the example, if it's someone that I'm looking for that's intellectual, well, it's going to look funny if I meet someone intellectual, but then I know nothing about anything, right? So obviously I have to study up and read. So it's positioning yourself in the areas. And look, can I acknowledge as well that there might be people here that are watching and listening that aren't Christian, that don't believe in biblical principles. So if I can even break that down to love your neighbor as yourself, it pretty much another way of saying it is treat others as you want to be treated, as you deserve to be treated, and as you are called to be treated, not as you think you should be treated, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so again, within that process, is if I want to meet someone, like we use the example intellectually, well, then I have to make sure that I invest in that. Yeah. And what you find is that what you invest in, that's what you attract. Again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, the whole saying, misery attracts company.
Yeah.
You notice that whatever you are investing in, you will attract like-minded people into your world.
Yeah.
And I even ask you this question in return. I know you're the question man, but I'm going to take one here. Like, think about in your own journey, right?
Yeah.
How you've just come and you've encountered the power of God, and you talk about how in your previous relationship, how you were controlling in the way, not so much out of love, but out of more need, out of your insecurities.
Lust, yeah.
A year or two on, or however long it's been on.
Yeah.
How have you found the relationships and the people that you've met since you've discovered that your worth is far greater than what you had imagined before?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. It's crazy. When I started making healthy decisions, the people around my life are also of the same degree, running the same race. And it's very true. When you invest into these healthy things, only healthy things come out of it. And I think what really came down to was realizing, I was reading this book. It's called Compound Effects. And, it seems like a businessy type, motivational type book, but it really what's there is very true to life. And what I've come to understand is that in the fabric of life, there's one thing we can't escape. And the one thing we can't break, and that is the law of sowing and reaping. Yeah. So in the demise of my previous relationship, it wasn't an accident that had happened. It was from the decisions that I made bit by bit, which accumulated to stack up to a pile of trash that came crashing down on me. And from then on, I was faced with the reality that, hey, that's my past. Yeah. I can't change my past, but I'm in the middle ground now, and I can change for the better for my future.
Exactly.
So and that began with healthy habits, healthy choices. And I think one of the quotes that really hit me was that every decision that we make, whether good or bad, is an investment towards the future. Yeah. And one thing I want to tie into this as well, in preparing for relationships, one thing that really destroyed my character, and I must say this up front, and it's something that I'm healed from, is pornography, because it changed the way how I viewed women. Yeah. And it made me treat my my girlfriend at the time as like an object. Yeah. And the way I would speak to her, the way I would say things to her. Yeah. And so things like that, things we do behind closed doors, right? Yeah. It's an investment towards the future. So when you reap that fleshly stuff, those things, it will come out eventually. Because what's festered in the dark will always come out.
And even just to add on that as well, I mean, when you think about what and who are you allowing to invest in who you are as a person will determine how then you treat other people. Yeah. So again, another practical tip just going on that is think about the people that are in your life. Think about those people. Are they speaking life into you? Are they telling you what you need to hear?
Yeah.
Or are they only telling you what you want to hear?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times on our couch at our house, when we're doing a journey with couples, sometimes it almost feels like I'm hitting them with a baseball bat when I'm telling couples what they need to hear, because no one's ever told them that.
Yeah.
All they tell them is, "Oh no, you're awesome, you're great, that's okay." But you know what? A true friend is going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Will put their arm around you and say to you, "You know what? You're better than this."
Yeah.
Or you know that decision, yeah. You know, like, and not just only tell you bad thing. Remember, there's got to be a balance. And I remember when I was doing my youth week degree, I heard about the principle of the 3-to-1. That for every 3 positive things you tell someone, it opens up the opportunity for you to give a constructive. And note that I say constructive, not negative.
Yeah.
Because constructive has an element of a negative aspect, but the negativity is just a flaw of what can be better. So, for example, you know, it separates a behavior from a person.
Yeah.
So let's just say, you know, you're someone who's regularly late, for example. We're going to catch up, you're regularly late. Negative is me saying, Aaron, you're always late. Mate, you're never going to amount to anything because you're always late.
Yeah.
Whereas constructive is like, hey, I notice that you've been late the few weeks. I know that that's not who you are. You're usually much better than that. What's going on? Yeah. Let's talk about the issue. Let's not attach you to the issue. And that's why a lot of people who are, you know, in difficult relationships or struggling in singleness do so, is because they attach a behavior to their identity. Yeah. Well, I'm just ugly, or I'm just unreliable, or I'm just this. We attach things to ourselves that are actually things that are not just based on one person's opinion, doesn't define who we are. Yeah. But when you have friends that actually constantly reinforce, for example, the person who feels that they're ugly, you've got friends that reinforce, one, that you are a beautiful person, not just because of how you look like on the outside, but because of the qualities of who you are inside, you know, of how they make you make them a better person for being in their life. All these things, when you've got friends that reinforce that, what that does as well, that's a practical thing, excuse me, as well, practical way of building into your identity. Yeah. Again, we live in a culture that's performance-based. Yeah. I'm only going to tell you when you do good when I see you do something good. Yeah. Whereas, you know, and if Sonia were here, she'd attest to this. Like, I don't wait for her to do something for me to tell her that she's the best decision that I ever made. Yeah. Every single day. In fact, I have a few people that laugh at me where, you know, I'll talk to her 3-4 times a day when she's at work, when I'm at work. Yeah. Again, to remind her that I love her. It's like, oh, it's not like she's going anywhere. But why do I do that? I don't need to wait for her to do something, because, again, you know what? I am a better man because she's in my life. I am a better person because she's in my life. So I'm going to let her know that. So even when she does something that perhaps falls off the mark, she already knows. Yeah. That doesn't change my perception of her, because you know what? Again, I'm practically getting proactive in making sure that she's got enough credits to know that she doesn't need to be insecure about whether I love her or not. Yeah. Same with friendships. My friends know where they stand with me. Yeah. My friends know when I reach out to them that I encourage them. I don't wait for them to do something to encourage them. They already know that that I love them and I think the world of them. Are they going to let me down? Am I going to let them down? Absolutely. But I don't focus on those little lapses of judgment to define a whole friendship. Yeah. Because, again, practically you're sowing life into people. So we need to take stock every once in a while and think about the relationships that we have. Are they healthy or are they toxic? And if they are toxic, well, you know what? You know what you have to do. Yes, it's hard sometimes. But again, if Sonia was here, she's someone that has gone through various toxic friendships that they would leach so much out of her, not speak any life to her. So she would think that she was nothing. And no matter what I would tell her as her husband, her worth was still focused on the fact, well, some person thinks she's toxic. Yeah. But when you cut out those people that don't have fruit in their own lives and don't actually speak life, and again, life is constructive as well. So when I say toxic, I mean people that are just negative. You're a bad friend. You're never there for me, or whatever it might be. Yeah. Not people that speak life into you that would actually say, hey, if there are areas that you need to change, this is what they are. Yeah. You need to get rid of toxic people in your life. Yeah. Because, again, they will leach out everything from you. And so, again, practically, you need to take stock. Who are the people around you? And then who are you to people around you? Yeah. Are you the person that makes others stand up? Or do you chop people down? Or you might be that toxic friend. I might be, you know what I mean? So you've got to take stock of all these things practically, and be okay that, you know, sometimes people will speak into our life that you might hurt a bit, but if it's constructive, it will build life, and I'll be all the better for it. I'm all the better for the people that I guess have given me the old metaphorical clip behind the ears. Yeah. From a good heart, I believe that I'm all the better for that. Yeah. Than if people had just been telling me how amazing I was, and then ultimately being
That's
blindsided.
powerful, yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I really appreciate that. I think that's very essential, who's speaking into your life, because it really just, one, it invests in you, and what's invested in you will always be an output, right? Because I think one, it just builds you up. I remember back in New Zealand, this guy, he was the pastor's assistant, and he always wanted to catch up for coffee. And I was that guy who'd say yes, but I would never make any commitment to, I wasn't about that. I never saw the benefits to it. But I often ask myself, I wonder now, if I had said yes to those meetings, where would my life be?
Yeah. Wow.
I really truly wonder. I was like, man, like I wonder where my relationship would be right now if I had said yes to those meetups.
Yeah.
Because that guy was intentional of wanting to to do a life with me. However, I wasn't willing to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
He asked me at least like 3 times in 3 occasions. Hey, let's catch up for coffee, man. See how you're doing.
Yeah.
And I believe, should I have taken that on earlier, I wouldn't have gone through the pain that I went through, and perhaps I could have saved my relationship.
Yeah.
All these things. But let's talk about so these are in terms of friendship relationships. But let's talk about personal stuff and how we can sort of have healthier habits. So one, you talked about having good people speak into your life.
Yeah.
I think what I want to tap into is personal habits, things like purity.
Yeah.
I think this is a really big topic we should engage in.
Yeah.
Because I think in a sphere, in the society we live in today, it's very, what's the word I should describe this? It's very dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very dark. There are many influences outside of this world that are tapping into our hearts, our minds, that are just really changing the way we see relationships.
Yeah.
I know for me, like I said, pornography really hit me hard, and I do life with many men. And one of my guys back in New Zealand, where we keep each other accountable in this area.
Yeah.
Because it really just steals how God designed relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you could speak into that from your experience and mentoring people,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can even speak from my own experience. I mean, similarly, I was exposed to pornography at a very young age. I was 4 years old. I stumbled across, across it somewhere, and you can never erase what you first see.
No.
And what happens then is, the view of those, not just pornography, but I guess, the society that we live in, everything being sexualized.
Yeah.
It really impacts in the way that you view relationships. For example, these funny, let's get into the funny ones before we get into the serious stuff. Like, you watch a movie and you see people wake up and, they've got their best makeup, they still look fresh and they're right next to each other. And the reality is, when you wake up next to that person in the morning, you think, well, who on earth is that? And what on earth is that smell? People's breath smell really bad. It's just the reality of it, right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't help now that purity is not something that's seen as a popular choice.
No.
There's often levels of shame attached to that.
Yeah.
But God's design there's a reason why God designed purity to be the way that it was.
Yeah.
Like it says in Genesis, for that reason, a man will leave his father and his mother to join to his wife, and the two will become one flesh.
Yeah.
At that point, to become one. Why is that? Because there is something beautiful when you save yourself for that one person.
Yeah.
There is something beautiful when you choose to hold all of you until you meet that right person, you get married to that person, and they see everything.
Yeah.
There's just something powerful in that. But, there may be many people who are like me, though, who sadly made a lot of choices that I chose to give my purity away long before I got married. And what that did, just like it did for you, just like what pornography did to you, this did to me, it distorted my relationship and expectation on what Sonia had to be as my wife.
Yeah.
And somehow it creates this diluted mindset that when you give away your purity early on, it becomes that when you get married, that life is all about physical intimacy. When I tell you, and I've shared this with you many a time before, the physical aspect is actually a small percentage of what a marriage should be and what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it really distorts so many aspects. It objectifies what is something that should be, beautiful.
Yeah.
And what it does, it brings a lot of insecurities. It brings a lot of doubt. It brings a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
Especially, again, the way that the media plays it.
Yeah.
The way that you see it in pornography, all these different things, it's completely skewed.
Yeah.
And it leads to more chaos than what it does. So a lot of the times, because of the result of people, either giving up purity early on or being addicted to pornography, it really crushes marriages. Why? Because the expectation v reality in a marriage is very different.
Yeah.
You know, I hear, and yes, look, it's men and women we hear, you know, a bit. So it's not just a thing for men here. I know that there are a lot of women that do struggle with it as well. But what happens is that somehow people would expect a marriage to be kind of like a scene from a movie.
Yeah.
And there is so much more to it, but people think, oh, I'm being, you know, sold out here. We actually realize that they're selling themselves out, realizing that that's actually just a microcosm of what the relationship should be. So purity is so important in the sense of choosing to know your worth and choosing to know the worth of that person.
Yeah.
And like I said, you know, again, for even Sonia and I, we're very open about even our own walk. You know, even before we were married, there were decisions that we made out of lust that sadly, you know, impacted our first 2 or 3 years of marriage.
Yeah.
You know, and so now, like I tell you, like I've shared with you many a time, and you know, now the best times that I have with Sonia are not in the bedroom. It's actually beyond that. Like when I get to sit down with her and hear her and chat with her and get to know her more, that brings me more satisfaction than anything physically can. You know, and so again, purity is not just in the bedroom. Purity is not just about sex. It's just not about that. Purity as well is going back to seeing the best in other people. Purity is about being genuine with other people. Purity is about bringing you mentioned this earlier, bringing out what's in the dark into the light. Purity is about bringing all your vulnerabilities on the table and actually showing someone everything about your heart as well. That's purity.
Yeah.
Because where there is anything that's deceitful, whether I withhold something from a person, where there is a little thing, you mentioned it earlier, it's the little things that make the big things fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why it's so important to realize and not just look at purity as like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to kiss someone, you know. No. Purity is, again, it's far greater than just a physical decision.
Yeah.
It's about choosing to say, you know what, I want them to have the very best of me.
Yeah.
But now is not the time. Let me get to know one another. Let's go through that process. And when that day comes, you know, I tell you what, you'll live a much more happier and fulfilled married life.
Yeah.
I can attest to this. Like I said, it's now our best years now, but early on it wasn't. And it wasn't her fault.
Yeah.
As much as it was mine.
Yeah.
Because I had these expectations and I would objectify her. And if I didn't get what I wanted, well, she was not doing the right thing because this is not how I had seen it.
Yeah.
When really I had completely missed the whole mark and the whole point. For those, you know, that are like me, you know, I tell you what, there are a lot of people, it's like, well, it's great and good to say to wait till you're married. I've already made that decision.
Yeah.
It's never too late. You might be in a relationship right now. Can I tell you, can I challenge you? You know, at this moment to actually say, you know what, let's start over. Let's save ourselves for marriage. Let's build our emotional reserves. Let's build our spiritual reserves.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, the overflow, you know, God will restore your purity in that as well. One of the beautiful things that we read about God is His grace. You know, and what's grace? You know, it's unmerited favor. It's that, you know what, even when I've done wrong, I can do right. God will just restore that.
Yeah.
He forgives our sins. He's not this judgmental person, right?
Yeah.
And so again, it's never too late to start. It's never too late. For those that may be struggling with pornography, it's thinking, what is the undercurrent? I mean, the pornography is the effect of a much deeper cause. What is that? What is leading you to want to have to watch porn? What is leading you to want to have to, you know, be promiscuous? What are all those things? What's the actual cause of that? It's not a disease again. It's not even about that. It's just understanding, well, what's my motivation in that?
Yeah.
Because I know in the times where I wasn't with Sonia and, you know, I made my decisions, I tell you what, I mean, in the physical, there might have been some level of gratification, but the emotional, it just left me emptier and emptier each time. I had this massive void.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
But there was not one person. And, you know, and sometimes I have chats with people who tell me that somehow I'm not living the good life because, you know, they're still going and meeting different people every day and doing what they do. And I'm just married to the same old person. Well, you know what? I tell you what, I couldn't live any other way. I love the very fact that I get to wake up with the very best person in my world who makes every single moment of the day brighter for me and gets the best out of me, and I get to do life with. And even every single part, the good side, the bad side, the ugly sides, they still choose to love me and champion me on. I don't see how I've got the short end of the stick. You know, but again, you know, even in marriage, it's choosing to be, you know what I mean? Like, it's not something that is just for one season.
No, not at all. Yeah.
It's again, every single season.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of sex is never meant to be a dirty thing. It's
No,
again,
it's a beautiful thing.
it's a mainstream
Yeah.
thing that's been, that's been made to be this dirty little thing that you do.
Yeah.
And we see movies about that, right?
Yeah.
That just create these lustful thoughts. Man, it was never designed to be a dirty thing at all. It was meant to be. It's meant to be the most beautiful, consummation of a couple coming together, a married couple coming together.
Yeah.
That's what it's designed to be.
Yeah, and I think the problem now today is that it's sex is part of love, but it's not love. But with the world's voice today, it's magnifying that so much that we think that's what love is.
Yeah.
And for me, my heart really behind this question in itself is that far too often women are left to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
And it's very true. Women are hurt by men who don't know their standard of love because they think it's a physical transaction. And many women out there are hurt from this. I've spoken to many women around our circles, and it's a very true thing. And I think what I want to stress is that I think we as men, we have an opportunity to better lead in this space of relationships. So I think it starts with talking and knowing the standard of love. And I think also in the pursuit for a healthy relationship, we must begin walking in purity. And I've often pondered about that, when it says in Genesis, right, we're made in the likeness and image of God. And this book that I read, when it speaks of sinning, especially in the area of purity, then when we mess up, it's because we are now, not walking in the lane where God has made us to be in. So sin and all these stuff, like, I'm sure you could perhaps, recall in previous experiences that, like, after engaging in that space, we're like, oh, it feels wrong. I don't feel satisfied. And your left felt empty. And I often wonder when people say, no, wait for marriage because it's far beautiful then, it makes more sense then. Yeah. And I hope that for those who are listening, we get to walk that out and, put ourselves in that position because it really drains you out.
Well, there's that saying, like, it feels so wrong that it's right. That's what lust is.
Yeah. Exactly.
So for all those decisions that I had made in those moments, it was when I said it was out of lust, it was the whole thing of, it's the adrenaline of, oh, this is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
And what happens is after it happens, it's like, that was wrong, we shouldn't have done this, and it becomes this awkward, how do I interact around you, or all of a sudden, and then it becomes very toxic, and then, you know what I mean, like it's the overflow of that, right?
Yeah.
Where it's this beautiful apple that's positioned before you, and then you bite it, it's just a wax apple, it's hollow, it's nothing, it brings no satisfaction, no nourishment, nothing.
Yeah.
And so you're right. I mean, it's something that will come for people that understand their identity, their worth. They're able to push through it.
Yeah.
For others that don't, it just becomes a downward spiral.
Yeah.
Well, I've done it now. Well, I'm just going to keep going. Or I've pushed that boundary now, so I'm just going to keep pushing it further.
Yeah.
The reality is, I mean, from the very beginning of time, when we're reading the book of Genesis, we all fall for that. I'm going to try. Oh, well, it's a downward spiral. That's how sin was introduced, right?
Yeah.
It's like, God said you could have from any fruit in this whole garden, bar one.
Yeah.
Bar one simple fruit.
Yeah.
But that desire to want to push boundaries has started from the very beginning of time.
Yeah.
Again, it comes from that instant gratification. It comes from that self-indulgent nature, sin, self-indulgent nature.
Yeah.
But the consequences of that are far greater.
Yeah.
To one's worth. And you're right, as men, we have to step up.
Yeah.
And lead. We need to respect. Even more so, I think for me now, as a father of a daughter, you know what I mean? You realize, wow, wait a second, like, this is someone's daughter, but beyond that, this is the daughter of the Most High God. I mean, I've been given someone to steward.
Yeah. Am
I taking advantage of that one, or am I stewarding them to be the beautiful woman that God has made them to be?
Yeah.
And often we can use love because, again, society, the media, you watch your movies, it's make love. That's usually the slogan that's put.
Yeah.
Even when two people don't even love each other, let's make love.
Yeah.
So often it insinuates that if someone decides to hold that and save that purity, that the manipulative line that can be used is, "Well, you don't love me." It couldn't be any further from the truth. You know what I'm saying? I think it's redefining our values, redefining our worth.
Yeah.
And if ladies and gentlemen, if the other person can't respect that you want to hold that area of your life, then you know what? Know your value, and you don't need that person in your life.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it goes back to, again, who's inputting into your life.
Yeah.
Because someone that truly loves and cares for you wants what's best for you.
That's so true.
Not what's best for them at that moment in time.
Yeah. Man, that's so powerful. I appreciate that. Our time is almost up. I want to just tap into a couple more questions before we conclude this. I want to tap into the standard of pursuit. I think many men out there are guys that I speak to, right? Like they like a girl. How should I pursue her? How should I do this? This is something you and I enjoy talking about. Too many laughs at this, you know. Speaking to this, I've got some thoughts on this as well. But what is the standard of pursuit for a man to pursue a woman? Yeah. How should they go about doing that? Because I think that's far too often guys are scared of doing that. And for me, and this is not to demean any guys who use this approach, but phones, come on, fellas, let's the messaging, the DMs. I think we can do better than that.
Absolutely.
You know, I think we can up our game, and let's take phones out of the equation, and let's use a better a standard of pursuit. So yeah.
Yeah, look, I think as well, cheesy pickup lines don't work. You know what I mean? You know, using lines like, my favorite book in the Bible is the book of Numbers, what's yours? That's not going to work. It might work. If it does for you, power to you.
Yeah.
But I often find it's almost like a leadership principle, right?
Yeah.
I always talk about the whole idea of, you know, just observe something in someone that no one else would.
Yeah.
So again, and I'm sure I might get a lot of ladies saying amen here to me, but having a guy come up to you and tell you how beautiful you are again each time, it's great, but for a lot of girls, it's like, is that all I've got to offer in this world, that I'm beautiful? It doesn't really do anything, right?
No.
So let me tell you a funny story about that. When you observe something different about someone, it just sparks a different thought process.
Yeah.
So for example, there's a couple that I had the privilege of marrying 2 months ago, but I remember, you know, this particular person, you know, told me that they were afraid to speak to girls. They didn't know how to talk to girls. They didn't know what to say. They thought they were just horrible in that area and they'll never meet anyone. And then I remember one day, this particular person was playing at one of our campuses at church, and he goes, I didn't meet her, I saw this beautiful girl, and she was sign languaging to someone next to her. I thought that was, you know, amazing, but she was a beautiful girl. Yeah. I don't know how I could ever talk to her. And I'm like, well, have you ever thought about just introducing yourself and saying, hi, I'm this, and introducing yourself and actually say, hey, I noticed that you were sign languaging at the time. And that was awesome, eh? Yeah. It's like, no, I never thought of that, but what's that going to do? Try it. Let's see what happens.
Try it, yeah.
Tried that, and, you know, a year and a half later, here I am marrying that couple.
Wow.
Again, you know, in my pursuit of Sonia, I'm sure many guys told her that she was a beautiful girl. Yeah. But same deal for me. It's like beauty's, yes, it is a thing that does attract us. Guys and girls, let's be honest, you know, you do engage someone and you think, oh, okay, wow, that person is an attractive person. Absolutely. That is stage one. You've got to acknowledge that. But beyond that, you know, you've got to see qualities about them that stand out as well. Yeah. And so, you know, really just meeting that person and encouraging that person and seeing that, not for any agenda. I mean, obviously, yes, okay, that you want to get to know them, but when you start to encourage and then ask questions, get to know people. Yeah. You know, what that does is it really is a spark that can then grow into something great, or either a great friendship or a great relationship. Yeah. But it all starts by, you know, observing something in someone that no one else would see. Very true, yeah. I once heard in one of our relationship series that we had at church that the most interested person in the room is not the most boisterous person. The most interesting person in the room is the most interested person in the room. Wow. It's a person that goes around and asks questions about other people, not just talks about themselves. Yeah. Because again, I mentioned it earlier, there's nothing more frustrating than meeting someone that only talks about themselves and never asks you anything about who you are, or doesn't ask anything, but just talks about how awesome they are, or just how miserable they are, whatever it is. Yeah. There's nothing more frustrating or unattractive as that. You know, and so when you meet someone and you actually go and you ask the question, you ask how they ask their story. I mentioned earlier, what are they passionate about? What inspires them? What makes them, you know, what ticks them off? What's their story? What's their context? And you genuinely are interested. You paraphrase, you know, what they're saying, and you remember something about them that is not what they're told every single time. I tell you what, man, that does something for someone. Yeah, that's true. Girls, I know that the tradition has always been, hey, guys have got to court girls, but you know what, girls, don't be afraid to talk to guys as well. Same deal.
Holla at your boy.
Yeah, come on. Not this boy, but this boy over here. But, you know, it's the same thing. You know, relationships, like I said, when you go in with this expectation, this has to be the one, you know what? You're going to talk yourself out of it, and you know what? You'll never actually even get anything, but anything out of it, any relationship out of it. But when you go with the mindset, you know what? At the end of the day, even if what blossoms out of this is a very beautiful friendship,
Yep.
then you know what? You've already hit half of what a marriage is.
Yeah.
You know, Sonia is my wife, but she is my best friend.
Yeah.
The strength of our marriage lies in our communication with one another. The strength in our marriage lies in the way that we encourage one another, build each other up, which is all communication.
Yeah.
And so again, it's, you know, yeah, you can chuck in a funny pickup line every once in a while, but you can actually genuinely want to get to know someone and know something a bit more about them.
Yeah.
Again, at some point, it might be over a coffee, might be over a meal. You know, sadly, in church worlds, there is so much pressure that's put on relationships.
Tell me about it,
You know, I once had a guy that came into my office where a girl, and power to you, girl, she asked him out for a coffee. He was in my office saying he wasn't sure if he was ready for marriage. I thought I'd blacked out. I was like, how did we get from coffee to marriage?
Yeah.
But it's like that pressure that somehow people in church will ask, well, I saw you having a coffee, when's the wedding date?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Ignoring people on the outside. I think, again, you know, having a thick skin to be able to, like, okay, people can say what they want, but I'm going to take it at my pace.
Yeah.
But again, it's all about getting to know someone, going on that journey with that person, asking questions, not the right questions, just asking questions,
Yeah.
wanting to know more. And you never stop wanting to know more.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
so,
true.
Yeah.
And I think just adding on to that is intentionality, right? I mean, that's in the fabric of what you said.
Yeah.
But I think from the very beginning, defining what you want to do, because I think that protects the girl. It speaks to the value of her. So, you know, I think perhaps fellas, if we're listening, this is essential for the fellas, you know, so girls, you can shout out to this. But in approaching a girl, I would say define what you want to do, define who you want to be for her. Because I think in that sense, I was speaking to a girlfriend of mine. She says that it's just too vague when guys want to go out for dinner and ask for coffee, not knowing what their intentions are. Because I think girls want to know that you're not playing games.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the man that you are if you're saying, hey, I think simply walking up to a girl that you're interested in saying, hey, like, I think you're awesome. I'd like to get to know you more. Can we grab dinner or coffee? And I think from there, something beautiful can begin. But at least you've stated in the beginning, like, hey, I want to get to know you more. So it's not too upfront, but she knows where you're leading into this.
Yeah, you're not just genuinely wanting to check out the hottest coffee spots. You actually want to get to know. Yeah, exactly.
It should be like, what are we talking about? What are we eating over for, you know?
Yeah. Guys, girls, we're not mind readers, either of us, you know, and often we try to chuck hints out.
Yeah.
But nothing is more powerful than just being direct and honest. You're absolutely right. And there's nothing wrong as well if someone says, hey, you know what, thank you, but I'm not interested. I know sometimes that can lead to, you know, feelings of shame and guilt. I mean, again, I can only use my own experience, but my very beautiful wife, Sonia, when I asked her out, said no to me.
Wow.
And, you know, like I said, we had our long teenage relationship for 3 months. We didn't hear from each other for 2 years. Comes back into my life. In my mind, I knew this is a girl I'm going to marry. Okay, you know, it seems like the time's right. I asked her out. She said no. Yeah, it hurt. But I just remember that night, just my prayer being very simple. Well, God, at least I know where I stand. Now, we were in a funny predicament. We were in a church of 20 people. I saw her at church the very next day. I couldn't go to another corridor. I had to go and but you know what? Nothing changed.
No.
Still acknowledged her, still showed her that respect that she deserved.
Yeah.
Didn't act weird. And again, right, it genuinely moved forward.
Yeah.
It's not like I got over it. You don't get over something like that. But I just realized exactly what you said before. This is the best opportunity for me to show the guy that I can be for her.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if I had acted like an idiot and treated her really bad? Well, then she was like, oh, I dodged a bullet there.
Yeah.
But then, you know, again, over time, you know, she realized that, hey, nothing changed. Like, I know where we stand.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pursue. I'm not going to push on that anymore. But we just, push forward and built on that friendship.
Yeah.
And then 5 months later, she actually reached out to me.
Let's go.
And she said, you know, I said no because I wanted to make sure that my first boyfriend will be my last, will be my life partner. And I'm glad that I stuck to my guns in that and that I didn't change anything about me and make myself this person, self-preservation. I'm glad that I was like, you know, it is what it is. I've got to just take every step forward because who knows? I may not be where I am. I wouldn't be doing these podcasts right now.
No, exactly.
Yeah, so.
And something we can learn from that is consistency, right? So,
absolutely.
Intentionality, transparency, and consistency. In
Exactly.
standard pursuit, approaching a girl, let her know your intentions, be consistent with who you are. And I think, laying out yourself, like, hey, this is where I want to go with you. This is what I want to do. And I think in doing that protects her and, and lets her decide, should she want to do this.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I wish we do have more time. But I think that's a lot of things to take in for today. But just to wrap this up, Pastor David, what's one thing we learned, or 3 things we learned about today? If we could just summarize the 3 points we've talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. First of all, understanding that love is a choice.
Yeah.
Making sure that above all else, you choose to see the best, you choose to see the worth, you choose to give the best of yourself in every relationship. The second part is obviously preparing yourself for relationships by starting with you, your identity, seeing in someone else, but being what you want to see in someone else in yourself as well.
Yeah.
So you want the best woman for your life, well, you got to be the best man for her life. So preparing yourself, recognizing your identity, and lastly, obviously in the way that you pursue others, be interested, ask questions, get to know people, never stop getting to know people. Yeah. Even once you get to that ultimate goal, if it is the ultimate goal, marriage, you never stop dating, you never stop getting to know people. So again, constantly investing in all relationships as well. And so practically making sure that you go out there and you ask questions. Beautiful things start from the best questions that you ask people. So
that's awesome. I really appreciate that. For me, the 3 things I could take home with this is that in the beginning, really knowing the standard of love, the definition of love, because we're engaging in love. And if you walk into something not knowing what you're going to engage with, then you're only going to fail. It's like walking to a test not knowing the answers, right? Or not knowing the topic at all. Secondly, I think for me, what I want to stress on in bettering ourselves in our single season is really becoming who we're called to be, or knowing ourselves. And added to that is walking in purity. Because if you don't walk in purity, you're only going to take in the baggage with you, all these dirty things, and it's going to be a mess when you walk into a relationship when you have nasty stuff you haven't dealt with yet. And we don't want to do that. No. We want to protect our partner who we want to journey with. And lastly, man, I encourage you, whether you're Christian or non-Christian, listening to this, getting to know God, knowing the standard of love and knowing Him, because He designed us. He created all these beautiful things, and I think from that we can walk into a space of relationships far healthier, far better than perhaps our previous painful pasts. Or if you haven't dealt with or engaged in a previous relationship, that'll be all the more to you. All more, it's more beautiful. So, hey, Pastor David, thank you so much for being here.
So good being here.
Yeah, I got to get you back for our leadership podcast, man, because I know you've got some handles on that too.
Mate, it'd be my greatest pleasure. It's great to speak to all our listeners out there, and hopefully at some point we'll get to meet you.
Yeah.